but we're going to wait a few seconds, folks. And I'm hoping this one is truly live this time. Anybody give me a shout out there and let me know if I'm coming through?
We're not. I'm not.
Okay.
It's not.
Kimberly says I'm not coming through for her. Let me check here. Yeah. Okay, I've got a commercial going on here.
So do I.
And we're live. All right. That's funny. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the bottom line. This is our fourth fireside chat this evening. And of course, as usual, I stream one for 1 hour from 5 to 6 every evening, or Sunday evening, I should say. And then I take a short break, and then I'm right up on the panel at Royce in the House. So after tonight's stream, be sure to head on over there. Because we're going to be talking about David Bowie. So tonight we're going to be covering rock bands. All right. So you won't see David Bowie on the list we're going to be discussing tonight. And just to kind of let everybody in on how this list has come to be, I should say, is during the week, what I've done is I've taken my original Mount Rock Olympus list of 13 bands that I saw as the top 13 bands of rock and roll. And the channel, you know what? We're just closing in on our third year. February 15th will be the beginning of the fourth season here on the bottom line. And after 3 years, I've decided let's put the power to the tribe. So, what I've done over on they used to call it community. I notice now they're just calling it post. So, on my post, I ran a series of polls uh, based on that original 13 bands. Now, as Tribe Master, you have deigned that I be so. So I've taken it on. I've taken the mantle on. I took three bands off of my original list that I wasn't willing to part with, and they are my top three bands in rock and roll. And of course, I'm talking about the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and Pink Floyd. But the other 10 bands were up, well, for dispute, if nothing else. Okay, so here's what I did. I took those 10 bands and I added another 10 that are on my channel page. It used to say about. I used to tell you guys, click that about, and you'll get to this list that I have. But now it just says more, right? You go to anybody's channel page and you click more, and it gives you where they've been, how long they've been on YouTube, and their description, and that's where I put this list. Okay, so that left the 10 bands, and I have never officially chosen my fourth or my fifth favorite bands. After those top three bands, the list was just there. I never ranked any of them, although I was about to rank Yes as my fourth favorite band. Okay, now keep all of this in mind. This is how the list has been for 3 years. Now, what I did was I took that list and I added, where the hell are my notes? Let's see. Here we go. I was all prepped, folks. Honest. Okay, here we go. Um, so the original list was this, and after the first three bands, no orders. The Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, one, two, three. Now everybody else was catch as you can. The other bands, the other 10 bands that I originally had up there was Queen, Yes, The Police, Steely Dan, Jethro Tull, The Rolling Stones, Deep Purple, The Eagles, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and the Moody Blues in no particular order. All right. So I took those last 10 bands and I mixed them with an additional 10 bands. Okay. And I added the Doobie Brothers, Rush, Black Sabbath, Genesis. And by the way, Black Sabbath was actually on the top 13 at one point, and I dropped them by one spot only because I felt a need to put the Moody Blues there. I think they're the original prog rock band, and what they did was absolutely amazing. So I added the Doobie Brothers, Rush, Black Sabbath, Genesis, Uriah Heep, Def Leppard, Rush, Fleetwood Mac, the original Alice Cooper band, and The Who. All right. And then I mixed them up and tried to keep the choices. Uh, well, later on, I kept the choices to three, with the exception of one. Just it's the way the uh, YouTube sets it up when you run these polls. They used to give us five choices, up to five choices. Now you can only do four, and it hampers my polls to no end. But when I added that in the first round, here was the results. At number one, and this is not the final results, okay? This is first round. Then we go to the final round so that bands that were mixed in improperly, or to some people's, or by some people's views, they got another chance. And I just made sure, and it was also based on percentages. The first round went number one, the Beatles; number two, Led Zeppelin; number three, Pink Floyd; number four, by a whopping 51%, the Rolling Stones. Now, how can I argue with that? I mean, that's the freaking Rolling Stones, and I think that is a very fair placement for the first round. And because they were the only band that got over 50%, they got 51%. Most of you voted for them. I gave them the number four position. And how the rest was done without the Stones in the draw, and there was a couple of surprises there. Now, the next in that first heat was The Who, uh, Deep Purple; at seven, Black Sabbath; at eight, Genesis; at nine, Grand Funk; 10, Creedence Clearwater Revival; 11, Rush; 12, Yes, that hurt; and 13, Queen. Okay, so a lot of my original bands didn't make the cut. And some of those additional bands who were always in my other list, but not listed quite the same way, I called them my demagogues or demigod bands, right? Okay, so we went to the second heap and got the final results. And here it is. The second round, number one, of course, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and Pink Floyd at two and three. At number four, of course, the Rolling Stones. At number five, with Rolling Stones out of the mix, people started voting a bit differently. Number five, of course, The Who got there. They damn near got nailed it in the first round. Okay, so they are your number five, your fifth favorite band of all times, based on my little poll. All right, my little poll, by the way, over 10,000 votes on these polls. Okay, so I think we've got a good mix here, folks. At number six, Deep Purple. Oh, I love this. All right, well placed. At number seven, you had to have this band, Black Sabbath. Now, Deep Purple on their first round got 43%. They got 44% this time. Black Sabbath got 42% on both rounds. These were the two most consistent vote getters, other than the Stones and the who just, there's just a massive fan base for those two bands. At number eight, Rush. Now, in the first heat, Rush was at number 11. So with the Stones, right, and the Who out of the way, Rush did a lot better. They went from number 11 to number 8, up 3 points. At number 9, Creedence Clearwater Revival, compared to the number 10 spot it got in the first round. All right. And then at number 10 this time was Queen. And again, another improvement. Queen went up 3 spots from 13 to 10. At number 11, Yes. And of course, they did better without all that extra competition, because they were at number 12 before. Number 12 in the finals was Genesis. And they got 39%, by the way, in that first heat. This time around, they only got 18% in the mix of this. So that's why they went down from that first heat. But they were strong contenders in the first. And then finally, number 13, Grand Funk Railroad, who got 33% in that first heat, but second round only 16%. So they suffered worse than Genesis did. But they both are in the top 13 bands, according to who? You folks. And I want to thank you all so much for participating in this poll. Now, I'm going to try and get over here and get to some of these comments if there's any here. Let's see. Let's start at the top here. Now, here's a question to all of you. And by the way, I'm going to mention this from time to time in my streams. Right after this stream at 6:30, Royce Eddings from Royce in the House will be streaming, and of course, I'll be on that panel at 6:30. All right. So this stream is set to end by 6 o'clock. So we've got 3/4 of that time still left to chat. All right. So first of all, hey Royce, it's good to see you, brother. Storm Cop, James, absolutely freaking nice to see you. Ivan's in the house. Dwayne Chamberlain. Hi, Dwayne. Have you made our chat before? We've had so many weird things happening with our chat. And I might ask a question here. How am I coming off mirrored
We're at 50.
like I was before? Do I look like I'm right side up or inside out, babe?
We're backwards again.
I'm backwards again. So there's nothing I can do about that through this, but I am in the future going to be looking in to upgrade this whole look of this whole thing. But I wanted to get it off the ground, and this is the easiest way. And me backwards is about the same as forwards anyway. I'm so confused. Piccolina, it's so good to see you off and over at Royce's. We've got Divining Dragon, of course. Let's see, Stormcock. What? Okay, please hit the like button. Thank you, James. You know what, folks? That should be one of the first things. But see, I'm not a pro like Royce. I don't remember that stuff. But if I can get 50 thumbs up, then the algorithm bumps it up further, right? Puts it into wider feeds and all of that. And every 50 after. So it jumps a little bit more.
Storm Cop gave you $20.
Oh, James, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Oh, man. James, I don't know how you can afford it. James just did a solid for the channel and gave me a $100 donation. He is by far my biggest patron as far as financially supporting the channel. And I want to encourage everybody, if you could, even $2, whatever, that helps the channel. I put it all back into the equipment you see behind me. All right. And I use it to improve the channel. All right. So that's good. But if you can't, there are other ways. One of the ways that you can support this channel, some people watch, they don't have the bucks right now. They'll watch a commercial for me. Right. Well, that goes into, I make money on commercials. I'm monetized here on YouTube. So I always appreciate that. The views, though, just the views alone supports this channel. The thumbs up absolutely supports this channel. So anything out of all of those options that you could do, I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, folks. I mean that. Let's see, who else do we have here? Ian LaBelle, my bread and butter is from 65 to 85. You know what? If you're talking bread and butter, yeah, I'd have to agree with you. It was around that time. I might extend it a little bit further. And I of course, am into some of the grunge bands too. But, my real heart and soul goes to that original, anything in the first 20 years of what might consider classic rock. Those bands, I just had a couple of people send me nasty little thingies. right? And one of them said, "You're nothing but an aging hippie. You never listen to anything new. You know, give it up," or something like that. Well, here's the thing. I may be an aging hippie. All right. There's no doubt there some of that's true. But if the guy had or gal, whoever it was, I deleted the comment. I won't put up with that kind of that's disrespectful. Now, if you want to have fun at me, go for it. Right. But you know, I couldn't believe that he was coming off that way because if he had known my channel, he knows I've covered new bands. I mean, I really have. I've covered um, uh, let's see who I bring them up so often. My biggest band that I absolutely love that's fairly new is Dirty Honey. Both of their albums that I've listened to are absolutely smack in your face rock and roll. All right. And they did it from the ground up. All right. And I also have covered Rival Sons. All right. The band Dorothy with the lead singer Dorothy. Holy shades of Alice Cooper, right? And of course, I've even covered. They're not so new anymore, but Greta Van Fleet. So I listen to good, and there's many more that I've listened to that I like ish sometimes. But in general, when you're looking at what's happening in the rock world these days, um, there's a real disrespect to the art form that I fell in love with. And of course, that's rock and roll, classic rock, and the many subgenres. All right. We're not going to get into what is rock and what's not tonight. I've already gone off on that tangent too many times lately, anyway. But that time period, from, I would say 64 when the Beatles landed, maybe 89, 90, 91. And I'm not talking about the grunge elements yet, right? Because some of what you two did was phenomenal and right into the 90s. Then they forgot how to make music. But I loved that whole time. As a matter of fact, I may not have extended that time if it hadn't been for bands like U2 and the Police. The Police actually got me very interested into the new wave sound that was coming out along with MTV and all of that. So, yeah, I hear you, brother. Let's see who else is in the chat here. Anybody got any bands that they thought that should have been on the list? To begin with, I'm going to go over that list before we nail this off at the end of this show. One more time for you folks, and then after I'm done on Royce's tonight, I will update that list on my what was the about page is now the more page, right? Okay, so let's see. A lot of you just chatting with each other. I love that. I absolutely love that. I'm often at other streams and I just love chatting, not being up on screen or anything like that. That's a fun thing for me to do. Let's see. Anybody else? Cheap Trick. Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. They're great. Absolutely great.
Got $5 from Just the Facts Man.
Oh, thank you. Let's see, where is that? I'm not seeing it yet. Here we go. Ah, Dan McNew, you sweetheart. Thank you. You know what, folks? Dan, uh, I have done a piss poor job of handling his seat over on Royce's. I inherited that seat from Dan. And I've got to tell you, Dan, we miss you over there. We really do. I always thought you were a class act. You brought a lot to the panel, and a lot of people watched just to watch you. They just loved your easygoing manner and everything. And you still had the best sound of all of us, the best mic, the best background lighting, and everything. The rest of us look pretty sad compared to you, especially my sound quality, because I use earphones for my mics. Now, that's another thing that may happen on this channel. I'm considering to add a mic I have over here. It's compatible with the iPad, which I'm streaming on right now. And if I could do that, you may see a mic in front of me to get a higher quality. The problem is I've got to set it up where I've got monitors so that I can hear what's going on and hear myself as we go through. All right, let's see who else. I thank you so much, Dan. Uh, Neil Goldsmith, Government Mule. All right, great mention and welcome to the chat. This is the first time I recall seeing you, Neil. The last band I was in, it really wasn't a band. We called ourselves Area 51, and it was me and another guy named Garth O'Brien. All right. Now, he was the drummer. Now, dig this. He was the drummer in my last band, No Man's Land. And the band just wasn't going quite where I wanted it to go. And so I said I wanted to take an acoustic approach. So I put together this duo. And of course, Garth O'Brien turned out to be, I thought he was just a drummer. He had mentioned he'd played guitar, but he never played it around me or anything. He was 10 times better lead guitarist than I am. And so we went on and we did Area 51. I've got some of those videos over on my Patreon and some of those videos over on my members. If you're ever a couple of live videos, small little demos I do on small little recorders this big and everything. But he's the one that turned me on to Government Mule. Warren Haynes, God, what a guitar player. All right. And he has one of the best vocabularies out there. I've talked about this before. Some guitarists have vocabularies that you go, like David Gilmour. You hear him, it's David Gilmour or it's somebody emulating his style, right? But it's his style. Now, Warren Haynes doesn't sit there, and I think because a lot of it.
Hon, you got $10 from Sean KM6NFO.
Thank you, Sean. And you seem to be fairly new here. I know, Sean Steely Dan. I said this in one of my last. I'll get back to Warren Haynes here in a minute, but I said this in before I set up these polls. I was worried about Steely Dan, and it's not because they have any less of a fandom out there. It's just in your average classic rock listener kind of channel, they don't fare as well, I've noticed. And I'm a major fan. They didn't put out one bad album, all right? And and that includes the last albums, all right? I loved Two Against Nature. Matter of fact, Kimberly and I were just married, and that album came out, and I must have drilled that into her ears for the next 6 months. I mean, that's the album. I'd listen to that every day. I loved them. My favorite Steely Dan, then back on to Warren Haynes. Steely Dan album by far though isn't Asia. Asia is one of their best, but to me, it's the Royal Scam. That you have to. I'm telling you, folks, if you haven't seen listened to the Royal Scam in a while, or you just didn't pick it up or whatever, that album is insane. I mean, you've got songs about biracial marriages, turn up the neighbors or turn up the Eagles. The neighbors are listening, as they're going at it. And you have people from Meets Our Five on that album. And then you look at the album cover and it all sort of makes sense. To me, it is Steely Dan's concept album. And I'll bet you it was never intended to be that. But that's what it came for me or became for me. Now, as far as Warren Haynes, I was saying that he uh, doesn't have a vocabulary that you go, oh, that's Warren Haynes, unless you really know his stuff, right? But a lot of his stuff was developed because he was so influenced by the Allman Brothers, even being one at one point. And so his Government Mule, see, it was Garth that turned me on to Government Mule. He kept passing me CD after CD after CD. Anyway, I love him. He's one of rock's very best guitarists, in my opinion. And Garth thinks he's the best. So, and I have total respect for Garth. But I do want to thank each and every one of you that have made donations to the channel tonight. That's so wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, let's see. Who else have we heard from here? And what are you talking about? Deep Purple. Okay. I am so glad Deep Purple did so well. And you know what? That's about where I was about ready to put them in regard to my own list if I had gone ahead and just made that hard decision. But then again, I couldn't, pawn off that responsibility on you guys if I had done that, right? So anyway, yes, I am so glad they did well. I'm glad that Black Sabbath was back in the list because it was a fine. I wanted the list to represent different styles, different time periods of classic rock, right? Originally, I had Alice in Chains in the original list, and I finally took them off. I had Clap 2 in the original list, and I finally had to take them off because I just slowly morphed. I'd say 90% of that list never changed, but there were one or two bands that were up and then down, and Black Sabbath was one that was on the list for a long time and then just but it's back, and it not only back, but very strongly placed. You know what? If I had to go to a desert island and the gods were kind to me and said, "You may have every single album by these top 13 bands that you folks chose." I'd die a happy man. I'd be in Nirvana, me and Kimberly in a hut somewhere listening to the finest music as we set into the sunset of our waning life. No, I Never mind. I don't want to go to the desert island. Keep the damn albums. All right. Anyway, who else do we have here? James Watson Beach Boys are stellar. Yes. And are very highly placed on my original list. They never got to the top 13. To tell you the truth, the Beach Boys were one of two bands that I got my very first albums. I got a Beach Boy compilation. I got it. First of all, I got one of those square little record players. You know, you flip the top. You put the thing in. You can put a 45 or an album, and you have one mono speaker, which I tore the grill off and put an American flag in. It was a thing back in those days, folks. And I had the Beach Boys, and I had the Four Seasons. I loved both of those bands. Frankie Valli needs to not only retire, I think he retired 10 years ago, and nobody has told the body yet. I don't know what's going on with him. Uh, you know, More power to him for trying to get it up there in his advanced stage and everything. But the videos I've seen are pretty sad, um, and it's not the right way to go out. See, I think everybody's got a shelf life. As far at one point, I had a shelf life as a psychiatric nurse. All right, that shelf life expired. Right, I had a shelf life as a musician, and that expired due to many things. All right. And so I'm still a musician. I'm still making demos and things like that. But I'm not out in a band. I'm not out trying to make it. I'm not even out to get into a small circuit anymore because I think I found my niche here. And that is, I am a rock fan with a little bit of musical knowledge. And I was there kind of at the beginning. At my age, I'm 70. At my age, I was the kid on the block of the original rockers. Some of you out there, if any of you are 80, you'd go, that punk, he isn't part of the original rock and roll. And those even older would say, hey, man, rock and roll started in 1955. Well, that was the year I was born. So,
JFLAK gave you $4.
Johnny, Johnny.
$40.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Johnny, oh, thank you so much, sweetheart. I really, you know what? Johnny and I, we either used to talk, through several streams, right, Johnny? But mainly when he was showing up on Rachel's show for the last year. But before even that, Johnny and I shared the panel over on Royce's many times. I love the guy. All right. And you know what? You couldn't find a bigger sweetheart on this planet, not just because he did a donation, which I'm thoroughly flabbergasted at, folks. But You know what? Cheers to you, Johnny. Thanks so much. You're awesome. You know what? Johnny's also a Patreon member too, so he supports the channel already, and of course watches videos. See, he does it all. Yeah, he's one of those. What do you call it? I can do a little of this and a little of that. Shake it up, blend it, shaken not stirred, and boom, James or whatever. All right, so let's see. Kind of like the Fat Elvis period, huh? Mm. I'll tell you, for me, I like the early Elvis. Once he started making, a movie a minute, I kind of lost interest in him. I liked a few of his latter hits, just because they were good top 40 hits. I love "Don't Cry, Daddy," uh, "The Ghetto," some of his later stuff there. When he decided to, kind of get back and really start making some records. But for me, Elvis, I kind of feel like what John Lennon once said. Once he started making those movies, he started losing interest in them, and I don't think there was a bigger Elvis fan on planet Earth than John Lennon. So, and I kind of go along with that. I love those early rock. God, the hips shall not be seen on TV, period. Right. Then he went into the army and came back, and he never was quite the same for me. Right. But is he the king of rock and roll? I suppose so. If you got to give it to one person, when you think about it, whether you liked his style or not, uh, nobody was a bigger star when rock happened. You thought Michael Jackson was big in the 80s? Ah, no, Elvis, that's why Jackson's called the Prince of Pop and Elvis is called the King of Rock. Who else do we have here tonight? Sean, good to see you. Let's see, who else? Aaron Davis. Oh, was gifted a membership by JFL. Johnny, you are on a tear tonight. Good Lord. All right. So, anyway, I wanted to get back to this list. All right. Now, I'm going to be doing some polls on where you want uh, sort of this channel to go. I'm going to be doing a series of each band's first album, the history behind it, and how it came to be. What I'll even review the album, whether I liked it or not, right? And I'm going to give a series of polls based on the bands that you chose. And I'm going to stay away from the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and Pink Floyd for a while. I'll get back to them and I'll give you a chance to choose those. But I want to get to the bands that some of the bands that I haven't covered. All right. And so look forward to my next poll. I'm going to choose the band and the album that you would like to see my next, fixed video, the big videos, as I like to call them, video of the week. Right. And you guys decide. I'll write it up. I'll even re-listen to that record all over, and we'll go from there. All right. So that's my deal to you. All right. Now I said that I wanted to go over these lists again, but just the second round, just to let you guys know, and I'll get back to the chat after this. All right. So, and by the way, don't forget, if you just started the stream and you don't know what we've been talking about, this stream is the list of the 13 top bands in rock as chosen by my viewers. Over 10,000 votes went into this list. So a lot of people did a lot of thinking. Now, if you just joined, the first three spots were already fixed, and I fixed them to those spots. That's the Beatles at number one, Led Zeppelin at number two, and Pink Floyd at number three. But for the remaining 10, I took those 10 and added another 10 to my original list. And you folks voted your hearts, your minds, you know, your own personal tastes. It was out of my hands. And my promise to the channel was whatever you guys decided. I was more than happy to put that up as the channel's official Mount Rock Olympus list as chosen by the viewers. All right. And that's, I'll even put that in on the about or more page. Okay. Now, after three, here's what you folks voted for. Just sorry for you folks who have been here, but I know sometimes we get viewers later on, and I wanted to make sure that they don't have to rewind. Although if you are here late, do rewind and watch it after the stream, but only after you've watched us all over on Royce's at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every Sunday. All right. Royce goes on at 6:30. I start by 5. I'm off by 6. Then I get about a half hour break and I'm up there with Royce. Okay. So here are the bands. Number 4, heavily voted by you folks, and I think rightfully so. The Rolling Stones. The fifth greatest band in rock, as voted by you, was The Who. Number 6, thank you, folks. Thank you so much for number 6 and 7. Number 6, Deep Purple. Number 7, Black Sabbath. And that's the way I would have listed them. They're so close. But Black Sabbath didn't have Richie Blackmore. All right. And if Richie Blackmore isn't one of the 4 top guitarists on planet Earth, I don't know who is. All right. So at number, again, the Rolling Stones, 4, 5, The Who. I may have skipped them. Okay, The Who and the Stones. You guys, you know what? Your response was phenomenal. The Who charted in the high 40s and both times, and the Stones first time just went to. It was the only band that got over half, 51% of you. So I locked them in even on the first heat. All right. So I said Deep Purple 6, Black Sabbath number 7, number 8, Rush, who went up 3 spots from the original voting. And of course, number 9, Creedence Clearwater Revival, well placed, well deserved, one of the best bands, and one of the bands I listen to a whole lot just day to day. You can listen to them. Their stuff doesn't get tiring, and I'll tell you why. Their stuff doesn't get tiring because it was so bare bones. Not a lot of overproduction on their stuff. They were a 4-piece, 2 guitars, a bass player, and a drummer, right? One lead singer, right, who also played lead, and they just had that jangly feel. So well placed. At number 10, Queen, who was lower in the first heat, so they gained by 3. Yes, who was lower, gained by a couple. Genesis lost out from the first heat because it was going against different bands you guys only had. So it's the limitation of the polls here on YouTube. You know, that's all I can say. I can only choose 4 bands at a point, and if I chose less and just had you go head to head, those polls would last forever, and pretty soon people get tired of them, right? Okay, and so Genesis at number 12 and Grand Funk Railroad at number 13. And you know what? If there's the perfect band for number 13, I think it's Grand Funk Railroad. Now, Grand Funk, the reason I like Grand Funk is a lot of the reasons why I like Creedence Clearwater Revival. They didn't have the greatest lead guitarist on planet Earth. They had a damn great bassist, right? And I think one of the better drummers. I might put Mark, not Mark, Don, uh, in the top 20. I love that band. And Mel might even get the top 20 bases. Actually, he's really good. But not they're not in the top 3. Mark Farner does it all. He's the to me, if they Grand Funk Railroad was a baseball team, he'd be the guy playing shortstop. Got to run, got to hit, got to throw. Got to be fast, have good reflexes. And man, that guy did it all. He's playing rhythm guitar, lead guitar, syncopation guitar, lead vocals, backing vocals. My God, he did it all. And live, I love their live stuff. And I've often said that band needs to heal all wounds or to wound all heals and to go ahead and get back together and tour and do it as a trio, the way I fell in love with you folks. All right, are you listening, Mark? That's the way, Larry knows Mark. He's interviewed him. So if Mark ever sees this, I'd love to talk to you sometime, Mark. But the interviews I've seen of Mark, he'd be okay with it. It's the other two, and you know, the fiascos of the band. Who knows? Maybe that'll be one of the bands that we could talk about, and that you could choose to listen to for one of my big video events. All right. So who else do we have here? Let me get back into the chat, see if there's anything new. Let's see. Yes, you're right, Dragon. The sheer number of hits they had, not a single one of them went to number one. Can you imagine that? But not a single one of them went to number three. They all went to number two. Can you imagine that? The only band in rock and roll that I'm aware of that has nothing but a long string of number two hits. But you know what? In those days, the competition was pretty damn solid, and for them to even get those hits, when you think of the other talent out there, shows you what true innate talent that band had. Who else we got here? Oh, I didn't know that, James. James Watson says that Mark Farner has a new album out. How new is that? I'm usually up on that kind of stuff. I'd be interested to hear that. Anybody else hear it? Kimberly, be on the lookout as far as when that album's out, if somebody gives that, or if they've heard it, whether it's any good. I'd be interested in that, folks. I really would. Terry Kath. Oh, God, Lord. All right. So here's the deal. Chicago was the one band that almost made those additional 10 bands that I added to the 10 bands, my original 10 bands. All right. And it's on the power of the playing of Terry Kath, one of rock's finest guitarists, bullet fast, soul, the whole thing. That man had it. And as long as he was in Chicago, if it wasn't for Terry Kath, see, I had heard the hit Spinning Wheels, and, the brass bands were starting to come in. And the last time I ever liked a brass band was the Tijuana band, Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass. And I was like 11 or 12 when a lot of their hits were first coming out. So, brass wasn't going to be my thing. Rock and roll and brass, that's almost like you put peanut butter in my chocolate. For me, you just don't do that until 25 or 6 to 4 came out, if I've got that title right. Uh, and I heard that, oh my God, I was sold on that band. And that man, he had, it was like you'd watch him play. What universe was he in? It's like there was no acting. That this was not showmanship. This is him doing his thing, man. He was, and often creating it right there. And of course, the rest of the band would do so, you know, pretty much themselves. There was a bit of a jam feel to early Chicago. So you get that feel like, yeah, we're just making it up on the spot, but at the same time, they have these arrangements for the horns, and they were so tight. And I absolutely love that band. And it's sad to hear that the three remaining members are saying that they're going to okay a totally fake Chicago to tour under the Chicago name. And many of you know what I feel about that. All right. Um, you just can't do that in my head. It makes absolutely no sense to me. And along with it, AI and all the bullshit coming through with AI and music, something's got to change. Paul McCartney just recently uh, made some statements because he's pissed off. You know, he's heard songs. What was the song he quoted it as? Um, oh, I'm not going to think of it. Well-known hit, and he says I never sang it, but there's an AI version of him singing it. You know, it's it's theft. It's dishonest. It's giving the human condition over to a machine. I mean, it's giving over human creativity over to something man-made, artificial. Are we really, as a society, willing to go that route, folks? Is that what we want? Is that what we're looking forward to now? That will be babysat by machines? Everything we watch, pretty soon they won't even have to have actors. They'll have the AI actors up there. They already have had these things, but I mean, to the point where one day, no, there's no point. Humans are so unreliable that they miss set calls. They'll come up with some stupid ass reason as to why this AI as a tool is fine. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. When the Beatles used some of Peter Jackson's new technology to isolate instruments that were originally on a 4 track and then spread those 32 instruments onto, or whatever, 48 instruments. They had the ability to go in and listen to the orchestra on a particular song and take each violin, separate, give it its own track, the whole thing, right? And then remix it. I think that's wonderful. That's AI as a slave. You sit there and you go, I want these humanly created tracks separated. I don't want your AI created tracks ever. All right. So AI is going, and it seems to be winning the day, and I don't think we can allow it. I think it is about as bad as what's going on with the touring circuit. These days, there's no room for new bands. There's no money from record companies out there to promote bands like they do, because all that cash is going to promote single artists who are usually rap or hip hop or just pop, or these days some country folks. And country's getting so glossy that, there for a while, they're getting real cowboy rockish. I loved it, but now it's getting into this high gloss production. I didn't like it when it did it. It kind of did that back in the 70s. I was never big into country music in the 70s because a lot of it was just ornate, And I come from country and Western folks. I mean, my dad even played with Buck Owens and the Buckaroos. He was a Buckaroo one night. He played on the Blackjack Wayne show out of Oakland, California, right? And I was allowed to stay up. I was 5 years old, and he was, they were short a man, and my dad was into the music scene in the Bay Area, and he got the gig and watched him on TV live playing with Buck Owens. So my country roots go back further than my rock and roll roots. As a matter of fact, I kind of when rock and roll came out, it was an excuse to hate country because that's what my parents did. That's what my parents listened to, right? But there's some kick-ass country folks out there, And another band that lost big in this last poll were the Eagles. They were in the top 13, man. They got aced out, and I'm wondering about that because when I originally did put them on the list and did some videos on them, they did really well. But that was before the incessant continued touring, saying goodbye right into the ground, you know, and Don Henley being caught lip syncing, them doing a residency, which is like me retiring to the old folks home. I mean, they're just nice, put taken care of. They can put their blankets over their wheelchairs in between shows. Nobody's writing any material. They're gambling. They're going golfing. Yes, that's what we're here for, and we're insanely ripping you off to do it. That's what I see, and I love the Eagles. When Glenn Fry was around, and they had uh, Don Felder, that was my Eagles. I actually climbed a eucalyptus tree of all things to see them because they were playing at Sonoma State University, and I had to get up over and see them play. And they all looked about that big, the whole band. Maybe the stage looked about that big from where I was, but I could point them all out. One of my favorite bands, but a real sad end to the Eagles as far as I'm concerned. Let's see if there's anything else here before I close out tonight. Boy, I got to tell you, we have way more viewers tonight than we've had up to this point. I am absolutely blown away by you good folks. We have had a chat. This is a chat of dreams for me. I'm looking at this. You folks are going crazy talking to each other. That's one of the reasons I started this channel. That's one of the reasons when I put out a video, I spend 2 to 4 hours talking to you folks almost in real time. I usually within a half hour, I get to your comments, and sometimes I'm just right on. It'll say 10 seconds ago, and I'm typing my response to your comments. And the reason is because I want the channel to stand for something other than me just sitting up here and talking about rock and roll. Any channel, there's tons of channels that do that. But I want it to be a place where rock fans can talk to each other, get to know each other. Yeah, we all gather over there, that old fool, that old donkey. We have to put up with Mchael, but I've made some good friends while doing it. So I just want to tell you, when I see this kind of thing, I mean, this is insane on how well you have responded. You're making friends of each other. You're getting to know it. I noticed that in my very first video before. I mean, 45 minutes. I'm talking about my first stream, actually, which was only 3 weeks ago, right? And you guys were talking in the chat 45 minutes before I even got on screen. And I love that. See, that's what I'm talking about. It's not the vinyl community, right? It's not, it's the classic rock community. Some of us collect vinyl, some of us collect CDs, some of us won't have anything to do with physical media. We just like to stream, right? Some of us go to concerts. Some of us wish we could still go to concerts. Some of us don't go to concerts anymore. But boy, what great stories I'm hearing from you folks. This is amazing. You guys write in to me all the time. Well, I saw the Guess Who back in 70 at the East Harlequin, whatever. It was a summer's night. You guys get real specific. And I think that's terrific. Now, this gets back to what at the beginning of the stream when I was telling you about this guy that was kind of having a go at me. Um, I see this channel as a curator of an art form. All right. So if I spend most of my time talking about classic rock, that I generally count a 50-year period in, right? From 55 to 2005. All right, that's early Elvis, Bill Haley in the comments, right up to you had Los Lonely Boys there in the 2000s. I thought they were kind of interesting. They flatted out real soon, but man, I love that band. Three brothers and a drummer named Ringo. How could they go wrong, right? And uh, the brother guitarists, I'm forgetting their names, the other two. Uh,
Oh,
Fabulous
yeah.
guitar player, played in SG. The bass player played 5 and 6 string bass at times. Just one of the best. I'm a bass player, so I'm telling you, he's good, right? And the drummer was phenomenal. The three brothers, I mean, they a power trio, only kind of a power pop trio, right? Tex-Mex at its best, man. I loved it. I absolutely loved those. So, and the Counting Crows did that album with Jimmy Page right around that time. You know, getting and around after 2005, there may have been some more cool albums, but they were starting to sparse out. And of course, the industry says that rock and roll hasn't been the leading seller since the 2010s. Okay. Well, I see it a good 5 years before that. You know, I think that's too easy. I think rock and roll was dying on the vine. Now, we get great albums and still some real cool stuff from 2005 to 2010, but not like we got really to even extend it to 2005. Things were starting to thin out there. I think the last hurrah, for the most part, was the grunge movement in rock, and nothing else has taken its place since then. And of course, with fools like Jan Winter and those guys, uh, you know, picking our as to and telling us as to who is rock and who isn't. We've gone down a rabbit hole, and this channel serves as the final defense. Okay. So take that from an old hippie, folks. All right. That's going to be the stream for tonight. I love each and every one of you. Thank you so much for all of what you've done on this stream. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay. Some great things happening here. My mind is totally blown. All right. And I will be back here next Sunday night at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, just before I go on Royce in the House. So I'm going to shut this stream down now. I'm going to take a few minutes, and then I will be joining Royce, where we will be discussing a rock legend, if there ever was one, David freaking Bowie. All right, folks? So the festivities have barely, nigh even begun. All right, folks. I'm Michael Nolan. This is the bottom line. All this bullshit is my bottom line, not your bottom line. It's what you folks are writing here. You outnumber me. All right? You outnumber me. So whatever the tribe says, I'm cool with. All right? And I'll see you next Sunday night at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I'll see you in about a half an hour on Royce in the House. And a big shout out to Royce, by the way. I want you all to join us there because if there is one person, uh, and I'm talking about a content creator here on YouTube that has absolutely backed every move I've ever made and supported me from the beginning when he was the larger channel. It's Royce freaking Eddings. So join us over there. Sign up to his channel. Sub to him, man. He's a good guy. You'd be doing me a solid, and you've done me so many tonight. I just want to pass it on. Pay it forward, folks. All right. So we'll see you in a few minutes, and I hope you join us over on Royce. And thanks to each and every one of you tonight. I had a ball.